Good afternoon, and welcome to the Department of Commerce. My name is Bill Russell, and it is my pleasure to welcome you here today to our Industry Day for HR Shared Services. Over the last year, our team has been hard at work planning this acquisition, and we are very pleased to meet you today. Our goal for today's event is to provide you with information and a better understanding of our program goals, contract requirements, and acquisition process. Before we begin, I'd like to spend a moment to go over our agenda today. First, we have the opportunity to hear from DOC leadership regarding the Shared Services Initiative, as well as our overall concept of operations. Next, we will have subject matter experts that can speak to call letter number 1, and specifically the 3 CLINs that you're going to bid to pre-award. And finally, we'd like to provide you with an overview of our acquisition process, as well as our schedule. Our presentation will conclude with a question and answer session, and I would ask if you have any questions during our presentation, please hold them until that time. On behalf of our team, thank you for attending our event today. Shared Services is a very important initiative because this is an opportunity to improve service delivery and reduce administrative costs. We need to hire faster because a vacant position not only represents untapped resources to our program areas, these are unfilled jobs that could be helping our citizens and our economy. We need your capabilities and solutions to deliver high quality and timely mission support functions, and I look forward to working with you as we implement HR Shared Services at the Department of Commerce. So without further delay, I would like for your help in a warm welcome for our keynote speaker today, the Assistant Secretary for Administration and the Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Commerce, Ellen Herbst.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Commerce. Welcome to the Hoover Building. I see you've made it in, so you've run the gauntlet of how to get into this building. We're in a multi-year renovation of the building, in case that wasn't apparent. I want to thank you for joining us today and want to reinforce that our goal today is to provide you with the information you need to help us. So I'm going to start. There aren't going to be slides other than you staring at my name while I'm talking, so I'll do my best to keep this interesting for you. The first thing I wanted to do is to provide some background on the goals and objectives of this initiative, because I think what we have been told repeatedly by colleagues throughout the government is our approach is a little different than the approach that has been taken in the past. We started this initiative with 3 program-wide objectives. The first is to enhance our commerce customer experience. And by commerce customer, we mean the customer for these services within the department. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, how we are going to measure progress against that objective. But as a preview, I will tell you we have baselined what our customers think of the service they are receiving currently. And let us just say it created more fuel for the fire that we needed to do something different. So our goal there is to increase the overall customer satisfaction through the efficient delivery of high-quality services. We also, as an objective, want to increase our performance management. And what we mean by that is to treat the delivery of these services as important enough to deserve the same kind of performance management we hold our mission and program objectives to. And in doing so, we are focusing on the transparency of service, the accountability to our customers, and information that will allow us to use data to make informed decision-making. And finally, but certainly not least, is to strengthen our mission focus. This has kind of a 2-parter for me. The first is that our leadership of our department identified hiring and buying of things as 2 of the major impediments to making faster progress in mission accomplishment. Those are pretty powerful words. And in fact, they are great gifts to us because what they say is that these functions, which are sometimes viewed prosaically as back office transactional functions, are in fact so important to delivering the missions of commerce that to do them well is to improve our mission outcomes. The other thing is more, I think, transactional in that our intent is that we free up commerce employees, both bureau mission employees and the functional employees currently doing these functions, so that they can allocate their time to higher value-added, more strategic tasks. So we think that's a double hit for us. We had some guiding principles that we set out at the beginning of this initiative, and I'm going to give you a timeline in a minute of kind of what we've been up to for the past year, year and a half, to set up kind of how we've gotten to today. But I wanted to talk about some of our guiding principles. So in the department, as you may know, those of you who serve the federal government probably know that commerce is sometimes thought of as a conglomerate, a holding company, because we have a rather diverse mission set across all of our operating units, everything from predicting the weather to counting every human being in the United States every 10 years to protecting fish, issuing patents. I could go on, but it's a very diverse mission set. And one of the ways we coordinate across the department is we have an interlocking series of councils at various levels. One of our newest, but actually one of our most productive and busiest councils that was started at the beginning of this administration, we call the Department Management Council, or DMC. It is essentially the chief operating officers of all of our operating units, so all of our bureaus, census, NOAA, et cetera, as well as the CIO, the CFO, representative of the general counsel, and it is chaired by the deputy secretary. And it's a key council because that's the place in every bureau where mission and mission support come together. And it's the people who are responsible for delivering on both of those things every day. The DMC, as we call it, has become our governance board for this effort, and so our guiding principles were established through input from that governance board and through an evaluation of industry best practices. Now, we have a number of them. I will read through each one, but I'm going to only highlight a couple, even though they're all important. So, our design principles for our shared services start from high quality service provision, improved customer experience, and performance measurement, which I've already talked about as our objectives. Next, we talk about independence of delivery of shared services. This is where we start to look and feel a little different, perhaps, than what you have seen or heard from other elements in the government. And what we mean by that is, today in commerce, we do have some instances of shared service provision within commerce. So one entity within commerce providing as a shared service some of this functional service delivery to other parts of the department. Some of that is done by bureaus, some of that is done within the CIO's office, some of that is done within the CFO's office. Very early on, the governance board made it very clear that we were to set up shared services as an entity independent from all of those entities. And in fact, our new executive director, Glenn Davidson, who you'll hear from in a moment, is the leader of that new shared service organization. We can go into Q&A or whenever you want, like why we felt that was so important, but we think that's very important. Another area is standardization of processes, policies, and procedures. We are committed as a department to best practice standard processes, which is key because we are focused on delivery of services and delivery of outcomes, not delivery of a system or delivery of one specific thing. We are looking for outcomes that are service delivery outcomes. We want to see continuous process improvement. So while we want to certainly start with best practices right off the bat, we recognize that as things change, we need to remain agile to be able to strengthen our services. Strengthening services as defined by both best practice across industry, but also as defined by what our stakeholders are telling us they need. And process transparency. One of the things we learned in our assessment was our customers don't think there is much transparency to the processes, and there's not much transparency to the progress that is made on any given transaction. And this is something they really want. So it's transparency both in how we have designed the initiative thus far, but also transparency as a goal of service delivery. So as you listen throughout the rest of the day and ask questions, I would ask that you keep in mind both these objectives and these guiding principles, and consider how what I've just described aligns to what we have done today and what we are asking all of you to give us feedback on. At this point, I'm going to ask, is it Danny? Is Danny going to do this, or Jamie going to do this? The poll everywhere technology? We're not doing that, all right. Okay, never mind. Okay, moving on. Why did we do this? Well, I talked a little bit about why we did this. I mentioned that our leadership is driving this, our departmental leadership, our secretary, our deputy secretary, our heads of bureaus. It's actually started from our strategic plan that we issued in late 13, where for the first time this department said, we're going to figure out what this department can do better if we do it together than if we do it individually, both on the mission side and on the mission enabling side. In our case, it was about how we improve our ability for the mission to execute better by improving mission enabling service. You're going to hear me say mission enabling services a lot, not administrative services, not back office services, not even mission support services. We started out saying mission support at the beginning of this initiative. We've come to talk about them as mission enabling based on the feedback we've been getting from mission leaders. And the way we're going to do this is through improved speed, quality, transparency, and what I call reducing the friction in the system. So as an example, when we talk to our program managers about hiring or buying, the amount of time they are spending on these processes is time that they could be spending on executing on their missions. So very much a part of our goal is understanding how we can free up that mission manager time to not have to worry about so much about whether his mission enabling functions are getting done in support of his mission, but rather basically rely on the fact they're getting done and use that time for mission execution. This has been a very, I would say for government and maybe even for private sector, a fairly fast-moving initiative. We started officially at in September 2014, and we have completed 2 phases of the project and are well into our 3rd. In that time, we've moved from talking about transforming services as a possibility to where we are now, which is executing on a plan to implement shared services. So once again, I want to emphasize, I'll go through the timeline, but I want to emphasize, this is a secretarial directive. The deputy secretary is the chair of the governance board. For those of you who know Washington, those are both political appointee positions. I, as the CFO, am a political appointee. The governance board is almost all senior career officials. Glenn is a career official. So this is not an initiative that's going to go away in January 2017. I mentioned that we started in late September. We say October officially, but I can tell you since we used FY13 money, we started in September. And in phase 1, we did a current state assessment. So we baselined service, activities, a lot of efficiency measures. So that is a best practice, as you all know, and we took the time to do that baseline. The voice of the customer exercise that we did, frankly, I know OMB has told us it is government leading in terms of what we did, the depth to which we did it, the number of people who were involved. It was quite eye-opening and quite sobering for us in terms of the depth and breadth of customers' desire for significantly improved services. And we also then were working on change management within the department. Fast forward to July of this past year, where we finished up phase 1. And again, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about what we did, and we started phase 2, which was the design of the shared service organization and the preliminary planning for implementation. And as of the beginning of this fiscal year, we are building out the shared service organization. Okay, a little bit more on phase one. So in phase one, this assessment, what we did was create teams, and we used other parts of our council structure. So we have a pretty extensive interlocking CXO council structure. And by that I mean we have a CIO council, CFO council, chief acquisition, Chico council, et cetera. But we also have interlocking memberships on those councils so that the councils are all tied together. All those councils are subordinate to the Department Management Council. So the members of the Department Management Council, all those people at those CXO levels actually report up to within the bureaus and at the department level. But I think one of the remarkable things, and one of the things I'm most proud of the people who have worked on this team, and two of the members that I'm about to embarrass yet again in public are sitting down in front of me, is we actually use the functional council teams to do the assessments, to do all the activities of phase one, essentially. Focus groups, surveys, collection of the objective quantitative data as well as the qualitative data. And then the teams took that feedback as well as we followed a very deliberate process that our partners Deloitte brought to the table and worked with us on. And the functional teams themselves developed the recommendations for which services were amenable to shared service approach versus the way we are already doing them. So I'll say that again. Coming out of phase one, the functional teams made recommendations to the governance board on which services, which activities, which processes, based on a series of criteria that had been agreed to ahead of time, would meet our objectives of improved quality, transparency, accountability, et cetera, better if we did them in a shared service way than if we did them in a non-shared service way. That list was quite extensive. And the reason I find that the teams did a remarkable job is essentially they knew, since one of the governing principles was we weren't going to do this for ourselves from within commerce, they knew that as they identified these services and functions, that they were saying, these functions I'm currently responsible for delivering, somebody else should do in the future. As with all of our decision-making at the governance boards, the teams responsible for making the recommendations come, they talk to the governance board, they brief them. The governance board gets a week, in some cases 2 weeks, to mull it over, ask questions, get familiar, get satisfied with understanding what the recommendation is, and then we vote. And we record every vote and every comment for every vote, and we have that for the record. And then out of that, that was what got us started. So that gave us the frame for, okay, what is it we're going to deliver as a shared service? And that enabled us then to start phase two, which was building out how were we going to implement. I'm just going to go back for a second to some of those voice of the customer current state assessments. It pains me to share some of this, but it's also, again, very powerful fuel for why we're doing what we're doing. So across 4 functional areas, four functional areas, HR, IT, acquisitions, and financial management, activities and processes within those, we were asking lots of questions. So here's just some feedback from the customer experience. Inconsistent service quality across the current providers, highly manual and time-consuming processes, lack of interoperability between existing systems, weak vendor relationships, performance measurement, reactive case-by-case issue management, inability to monitor and manage service quality. By the way, we just didn't do anecdotes. We actually did customer service percentage measures, which were quite startling. And mission focus, this is where we got to. Mission staff is consumed with managing, interacting, or escalating transactional back office activities, a lack of partnership between the business and the mission enabling services. Okay, that's about as much pain as I care to share with this group, but you get the idea. Again, coming out of that phase, what we did next was design a future state shared services conceptual model, including a high-level organizational design and governance model. Again, the governance board voted on it, gave input to the deputy secretary. The deputy secretary formally approved the decisions about what we were going to move forward with on shared services. This is documented in memo. Then the deputy secretary then charged the governance board and the executive sponsors for the initiative to stand up an independent team to move into the next phase of implementing the shared services. In phase 2, which happened all throughout the summer, there were 3 key decisions that were made throughout the summer. The first was sequencing. In what order are we going to implement which activities over which bureaus and parts of the department? Sourcing. Are we going to do this internally? Are we going to do it internal to the government? Are we going to go external? And then the third decision was the implementation gate-making decisions, like at what points do we come back to the governance board with what information to get the go, no-go, to go the next step. We did this again through using both a dedicated full-time project team, but also the functional groups continued to work. And again, we would develop recommendations, present them to the governance board. Governance board would mull it over and then vote. So we have a sequencing approval as to what we're going to do in what order and which bureaus are going to move in what order. We've made sourcing decisions. The fact that we're sitting here today on an industry day obviously tells you a sourcing decision we have made. We recognize that as we made the sourcing decision, we were very sensitive to our workforce issues. These sourcing decisions will not result in any reductions in force in the government for commerce. We are committed to make sure all of our employees have either more strategic, more interesting, higher value added jobs within their current functions, in other functions. If they want to continue doing the kind of work they do today, we will help them find that work in other places. So we are very committed to our employees through this process. You need to know that. And then the waves actually set in motion the time frame in which we needed to move through and implement these things. Okay, in phase 3, we are actually building the shared service organization concept of operations for all the first wave of transition we're going to make, including the shared service organization processes, systems, and organization. I know, Glenn, you're going to talk about this a little bit, but just to preview, our concept of operations is we in commerce will have a dedicated group of people who are responsible to commerce employees, commerce clients, for the quality of service that gets delivered through a variety of service providers. And so there are a number of elements to making sure we have an organization that has the capability to deliver significantly enhanced service quality, timeliness, accuracy, and accountability. So we are in wave 1 of implementation right now. We are here today as part of our wave 1 implementation. So I will stop at that point. Should we take questions or comments or no? No, nobody wants to take questions. Okay, so with that, unless I've missed out on covering anything that the group wants me to cover, I will say once again, thank you. Please listen intently, and because you knowing exactly what we want will help you give us better feedback. So I thank you. And I think next up, Glenn, you are next up, right? So next up is Glenn Davidson, who is I used to call him our brand new. He's not new anymore. His honeymoon is over. But Glenn is the executive director for the Shared Service Organization. We are still amazed and thrilled that Glenn has joined us on this initiative and are very dependent on his leadership to move forward through the next phases. Glenn?
Good afternoon, everyone. Great. I'm delighted you were here, and I'm really happy to see a lot of familiar faces. For those of you who don't know me, let me give, if I may, a just brief introduction, because I think Ellen demonstrated the really seriousness of this occasion, but I think by virtue of the fact, well, one of the things I'd like to do is have everybody on the project team, which includes my federal government colleagues and my Deloitte consultants, stand up for a minute, if you would. As a former vendor, does this tell you anything about how serious we are? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I am delighted to have inherited this team and continue to expand this team. I call myself an evangelist of shared services. I'm probably more like a zealot. I've spent most of my career advocating that public sector organizations look at new ways of delivering services, including through shared services, to enhance performance. And I've been a consultant, I've been a provider, I've been a buyer, and I'm a buyer again of services. So I kind of have that trifecta of experience, as do several of my colleagues. So we're very serious about this. And I came to Commerce for one reason, and one reason really only. I want to execute on what I consider a very progressive vision for improving the performance of mission-enabling services, and doing so through shared services. And that's also that my mission-focused colleagues can do what they do best, right? Which is promote job creation, promote economic development, sustainable development, and improve the standard of living of all Americans. So that's why I'm here. Before we delve into the presentation, I do want to do one thing that none of my colleagues knew were coming. Well, maybe Jamie knows. I want to apologize for our use, both in the RFP and today, of the word vendor. It's probably my least favorite word, having been one, right? Because it sets up a relationship that is, in a very simplistic term, we're either buyers or sellers of services. That's not what this is about. And I want to make that perfectly clear. We hear time and time again, we're looking for a partner. Believe me, we're looking for a partner. And there is no other better place to do that and demonstrate that than Commerce, because we're about enabling business, right? So the vast majority of my colleagues, as I've come to realize, have good commercial experience. And so the debate and the discussions that we have internal here are much different than I've ever had in any other government organization. So trust me with that, please. So as such, I would like us to start referring to our potential bidders as our potential partners. And I really expect that you'll work closely with us, alongside of us, as we go through this transformation journey. And as said, and I'm going to actually kind of paraphrase something that I'm swiping from Ronnie's presentation later. We need our partner to provide a wide range of specialized transactional HR services using high caliber, knowledgeable staff and leveraging modern technology so that Commerce may achieve more effectively its mission. Is that fair? That's why we're here. Okay. So, moving on. Before we cover the blanket purchase agreement and the initial call orders, I'd like to talk a little bit about our budding shared services operations. And this is, I think it might be helpful to you if you understood our concept of operations and our plans for enabling technologies, because it's going to impact you as a potential bidder. So this illustration really does reflect how we view Commerce's intra-departmental, multifunction, shared services center and how it will operate. And there are three major components. And I can do this by memory, but I've got a crutch. On the left-hand side, you're going to see service management. Ellen referred to this earlier. Some of these activities, and most of these activities, are largely focused on the fact that we are going to meet the expectations of our customers, principally through service level agreements. And we're going to manage both the vendors on their service level agreements and ourselves on those service level agreements. But we will also, you'll also see there are a fair number of administrative activities that for operating the center that are also part of this. Ellen also mentioned earlier that this is all about the customer experience, and so we have a program called Customer Experience Management, effectively. Now, in your lexicon, those are client account managers, right? And I expect them to do everything that we would do on the private sector in terms of serving those customers. So that means, right, responding to issues, anticipating needs, and, of course, cross-selling and upselling services, right? So the rest of this illustration really reflects our service delivery operations. At the top, you'll find the customer care, customer contact services portion. This is, as you'll see, omni-channel, right? We fully expect it will be contact center, email, chat, even fax for those who currently still use it. And of course, a portal. And then you'll see below the functional towers that Ellen referred to today, IT, acquisition, finance, and HR. And all of this is to deliver services to headquarters and then the 12 bureaus. So, for those of you who've worked in shared services for a while, this is not a new illustration to you. I get it. It's a basic ConOps. But I truly believe that when we are fully operational, no other cabinet-level department will be able to claim that they have, one, a single source of truth. That is our objective. How many times have we all called HR and gotten 5 different answers depending on who we got to a simple question? We want a single source of truth. We want a single point of contact, right? So everybody's going to come in here and we're prepared to even answer those queries that are not directly in scope and make sure that they get addressed. It's a customer-centric focus, right? Really key. This is important to me, especially a management capability that ensures that we're getting everything we ask for from our business partners on time, within budget, and consistent with agreed to service levels. Too often I've seen contracts written and shoved in the drawer and nobody ever addresses them. We have people that will view these contracts every day and know them backwards and forwards. True cost transparency. Most people here don't know what they're paying, what they're buying, right, or what they're paying for. And I fully expect that we're going to be able to tell them immediately what the cost is and where those costs come from. And then finally, and this is a passion of mine, is valuable information. By the time we're done, I hope that I know and my team knows more about commerce than anybody else, any of the principals, and that we actually feed and push out information to those businesses so they can do a better job of managing their business, starting with the workforce, right? So, what about enabling technology? Thank you, sir. This refers to the tools and technologies. Some of you I know are here because we put out an RFI around enabling technologies. There's nothing, again, particularly new here. You'll see what we're asking for. Case management technology, including a self-service portal and ticket management system, a workflow and integration management tool, a knowledge management tool, contact services management technology, including IVR, CTI, ACD, and digital recording. What's not up here and I've asked for is electronic content management, right, capability, because we're going to have a lot of paper we're going to have to deal with for a while. So my hope is that we're able to get this in a turnkey solution. And for those of you who did respond to that RFI, please expect by the end of the day some new actions. You'll learn about our next steps in this regard. Not that I'm not keeping you busy enough, right? So I hope these 2 illustrations really give you a sense of how HR services feeds into our concept of operations and the enabling technology that we plan on leveraging, and that at some point in time you'll migrate into. Because at the end of the day, this is all going to be about seamless delivery of services, no matter what the functional area is. So let's get to the matter at hand, the BPA, right? Before I do that, I'd like to introduce just some people in the room, if I may. I know that I saw Kevin Mahoney, if you could stand. He's the Chief Human Capital Officer for the department, so I appreciate your being here. I don't know, is Tyra here? Okay, Tyra Dent-Smith, who's the Deputy Chief Human Capital Officer, thank you. Kim Bao, who you'll hear from later, please. I don't see Vonda Bell with Census. Suzanne Porch, Gail Smith, and then finally Ronnie LeGrand, oh, there you are, Gail, thank you for coming. Gail Smith, who runs the Department of Commerce HR Operations Center, and Ronnie, who is our lead on the project team for HR. So thank you. Ronnie LeGrand. I also saw Barry Berkowitz here, so he's our Chief Acquisition Officer, so we got it covered here. Okay, thanks. Thanks for being here. So I wanted to introduce you to the HR folks because, all right, I've always considered myself one if I had to declare a functional area. But I got to tell you, upon arriving at this department, I was awed, literally awed by the self-reflection of the HR leadership. These people so clearly have understood what they do right and what they do wrong, or what they could do better, right? And they also understand the actions that they need to take in order to improve performance. So let's be clear right up front that the introduction of HR shared services is really just the beginning of an HR transformation journey, right? This is just the beginning. Ellen, thank you. So let's get to the next, if we can. Ellen referred to a little bit of this before. This slide captures, but a small subset of the challenges that the HR leadership has identified within their collective operations. And it also talks a little bit about their vision for the future. As I said, you're going to be able to, you don't have to read this now, but this will be available to you, and I think it'll be useful. But as you'll see in the next slide, what our HR leadership is seeking is high-performing integrated HR service delivery model. So one in which the Office of Human Resources Management sets departmental strategy, promulgates policies, ensures compliance, among other tasks. The Shared Services Center and its service provider partner handle the day-to-day transactional work of HR. And the Bureau's principal human resources management team truly serve as partners to their operating units. So enabling them to achieve their mission focus or mission objectives. So in other words, as I said earlier, moving to a shared services model is just that first step that we'll be taking to remake the function. And as such, I view my team and myself as really just another part of the HR function, not as a separate organization. So we are fully aligned. As for the BPA scope, if we can, you'll note that it's quite broad, right? This was done purposefully. Yes, we are seeking our service provider to handle the transactional services, transactional aspects of our HR processes, beginning with recruiting and staffing and PAR processing and separations management. But I fully expect the bureaus, people like Kim and Vonda and Gail and others, to actually leverage this BPA for other things, for higher value, more strategic related work. So this isn't just about HR transactions. It is for me today, but it is not for others. So the next slide, if I can, really just illustrates our implementation approach. As Ellen said, we're already in wave 1, so you see what's up there. This is call order 1, as you'll see, is part of wave 1. Please note, I got to make a caution here, DocRock, which is what we refer to, that center that really delivers services to many of the small bureaus. You'll see at the footnote which bureaus it covers and which it doesn't. As for waves 2 and waves 3, it might seem to some that we're asking our service provider to take over these functions. That's not the case. It's just largely about the transactional aspects of those activities. You know, the real value-added work will be handled by the bureaus and OHRM. Is that pretty clear? Okay. So I'm going to leave it there. Who you really need to hear from, but I wanted to set the context, and I wanted you to understand how serious this nature is. I'm going to leave this to, obviously, our experts in human resources and human resources information technology. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Well, for our next segment, we'd like to go ahead and drill down a little bit and talk specifically about call order number 1 and the 3 CLINs that you're going to respond to pre-award. And if you could bear with us, we'd like to go a little bit out of order because we think that the information in CLIN 2 and 3 would be helpful in your understanding of CLIN 1. So if you could bear with us, we're going to begin with CLIN 2 and 3 and then follow up with CLIN 1. Our first speaker that will speak to CLIN number 2 is Veronica LeGrand, and Ronnie will speak to transition. Ronnie?
Thank you, Bill, and good afternoon, everyone. I will be reviewing the transition and HR support services requirements under CLINs 2 and 3, as Bill mentioned, that the potential partner will need to meet in order to stand up the HR shared service center and meet the shared service initiatives, vision, goals, and objectives that Glenn and Ellen talked about previously. CLIN number 2, transition services, will start immediately upon contract award and will actually result in a fully stood up Department of Commerce Shared Service Center office with the HR services targeted for Wave 1 functions going live in August of 2016. And they will be Wave 1 functions and bureaus. As Glenn mentioned in the previous slide, we have an implementation plan that shows which waves, which functions are going and which bureaus are going. And you'll hear a recurring theme, and I will reiterate in my notes as well, that DOC is moving to a shared services environment in order to enhance the customer experience and gain efficiencies in its service delivery. We cannot stress that enough. And by having the Shared Services Center handle day-to-day transactional activities, DOC HR will be freed up to do those more strategic, high-value, and mission-aligned services for our customers. So to that end, a smooth transition to shared services with a seamless continuity of services for our customers is extremely critical in this transformative effort. Under CLIN 2, the potential partner is expected to work with the DOC project implementation team, the department's Human Resources Office, the Chief Information Office, some of its existing providers, to complete all transaction activities associated with a smooth transfer of information, services, processes, and systems applications to the Shared Services Office. This can include the development of detailed content for the standard operating procedures, job aids and call center guides, and testing and training related to the Shared Service Center transition. Our HR IT lead, Adam Santo, will talk a little bit more later about the HR IT and system requirements under this call order. So moving on to CLIN 3, support services for the Shared Services Initiative Wave 1 HR functions. So CLIN 3 actually focuses on the first set of HR functions that are going in Wave 1. So I just wanted to clarify that these services are talent acquisition, PAR processing, and separations management, which we've mentioned before, and they are going to be delivered to NOAA and the Dock Rock service organizations. Again, these services are targeted to begin in August of 2016. I also want to mention here that other bureaus and/or services will also transition in Wave 1 implementation. However, CLIN 3 right now only focuses on the certain ones that are going first that will actually be delivered in FY16. Future call orders will with vendor requirements will be released as we move through those transition activities in accordance with our project implementation schedule. Okay. So while detailed requirements for these functions can be found in the BPA and the call order, I do want to kind of call out some key requirements and summarize some of them that the potential partner must meet in order for us to facilitate an integrated end-to-end HR solution for DOC that provides consistent, accurate, and timely service delivery, promotes transparency and accountability into processes, costs, and performance, and delivers those metrics and real-time HR data to inform business processes and foster continuous monitoring and improvement, which will address some of those voice of the customer data and feedback that Ellen so painfully went through earlier today. Also, as Glenn mentioned in his overview of the Shared Services Contact Center, the potential partner will be required to integrate with and use the Shared Service Contact Center management technology to deliver integrated HR services and to provide call center support and problem resolution to customers and end users for these CLIN 3 services. So beginning with talent acquisition, the selected vendor will be required to deliver a comprehensive talent solution that supplies the department with diverse, high-caliber talent for its mission occupations, and the selected vendor will be expected to do so in improved hiring cycle times than what we are currently realizing. Specific requirements include performing the full range of recruiting and hiring activities from classification to posting job announcements, to rating and ranking eligibles, to issuing certificates, to onboarding, to just the whole, like I said, the whole recruiting and process. And though the full scope of the benefits and compensation management is not in Wave 1, the contractor will also be responsible for pay and benefits action processing associated with new hires under this call order. The selected vendor will also establish and manage employee records and forms such as EOPF in accord with guidelines on records management, retention of records, privacy, and of course, safeguarding personally identifiable information data. For the PAR processing, the second service in Wave 1, the contractor will process all PAR and payroll actions into existing DOC systems such as HR Connect, WebTA, and the NFC payroll personnel system, and plug into the Shared Service Center case management and workflow solutions to facilitate online and real-time HR action processing and tracking, as well as workflow and approvals for managers, customers, and employees, and HR. The third service in scope is separations management. Again, we talked about this earlier, and the vendor will be the potential partner, will be responsible for performing all separations actions and activities, which are including but not limited to calculating and processing lump sum payments, final salary payments, and counseling employees on separation activities such as continuation of health benefits coverages, post-employment restrictions, as well as bringing any innovative solutions to facilitate the employee exit process. For all three HR functions, the contractor must be able to handle surges in personnel action activity, and provide highly competent staff that has the knowledge of and follows federal HR rules, regulations, and processes in order to deliver high caliber HR services to its DOC clients. The contractor will the potential partner will interface and work collaboratively with the Shared Service Center, the Office of Human Resources, the local HR offices for seamless handoffs and touch points to deliver integrated and optimal HR solutions to meet customer satisfaction requirements. And additionally, the vendor must provide the HR infrastructure to support each activity as it transitions to the Shared Service Center, such as IT support and reporting, workforce analytics, and quality control requirements. Last but certainly not least, and Glenn mentioned this earlier as well, the vendor will be required to meet service level agreements. Target service level agreements with quality, timeliness, and satisfaction metrics required by the potential partners to meet in performing Wave 1 services have been identified in attachment A2 of the RFP. Bidders should refer to these SLAs in the RFP and propose a solution to transition to those target service levels that have been laid out. Again, I want you, of course, I've just gleaned over and summarized some of the requirements that will need to happen, or that the potential partner will need to bring in order for us to improve our service delivery under this shared service initiative. So please refer to the RFP and the call order for more detailed requirements on the HR services. So Glenn stole my thunder with my final, but I can't. I think it's worth repeating because it's that important. Okay, so DOC is looking for the potential partner to successfully transition and provide the full range of specialized transactional HR services by utilizing knowledgeable staff and leveraging modern technology to deliver integrated HR solutions to meet our mission requirements. Adam Santo, our HRIT lead, will now come forth and discuss the HRIT landscape and requirements.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen and prospective partners. Again, my name is Adam Santo. I'm the HRIT lead for this initiative. So I want to give you an overview of the HRIT, the landscape for this procurement. Just a few things I just want to mention. I believe we're going to have questions at the end, so I know people might have questions in this area, so I'll say if we can, we're going to have a little panel discussion up here at the end. Also, I think Ronnie made a great point, was made earlier. Anything specific, refer back to the RFP for the specifics. So while I'll talk in general, make sure just to refer back to the RFP. But what you have before you on the screen, I want to talk about 3 areas of concentration for the technology needs. The first is the enabling technology. As Glenn had mentioned, and as Ronnie had mentioned before me, through a separate procurement action, we will be acquiring the enabling technology. So what was on the screen earlier where you saw the IVR, where you saw the telephonic access, you saw Glenn mention fax. So that technology is off the table for this BPA. However, what I also want to point out the administrative HR technologies. So we do have a number of HR servicing organizations, and we do have an enterprise-wide, for lack of a better term, a stack of what we're currently using. So our payroll provider is the National Finance Center. We do couple that with HR Connect for processing 52 actions. We also use WebTA by Kronos. Many of you are probably familiar with them. We use the government-wide electronic official personnel files, or EOPF, for our record management. We also use Monster Government Solutions for our automated hiring. So these are systems that we already have agreements in place, and in the near term, we anticipate we'll continue to use for the short term at least. We don't have any plans to change that. So we want to talk about the bidder proposed solutions. So in wave 1 and as well beyond, there'll be ample opportunities. So what I'm going to limit my comments to at this moment are simply that wave 1 profile. So we're talking talent, records management, and PAR processing. So if we can go to the next slide, I could talk more in depth. So just so you can see on the top there in the dark blue, it looks dark blue to me, is the enabling technology, and again, that's the piece that's off the table for this procurement. However, what we have below it, we have the white and the green blocks. So the white blocks are the technology that's in place. This is our enterprise-wide architecture for wave 1. So you can see up there, many of the systems you're probably familiar with, everything from Monster Automated Hiring to HR Connect, WebTA, You see bottom right-hand corner NFC, which feeds into EOPF. So the expectation is that the partner would help manage and administer these systems, provide the system administrator support, and help manage them on a day-to-day basis. So that means the individuals should be familiar with Monster Government Solutions, EOPF, USA Jobs, HR Connect to perform these duties. The green blocks are areas of opportunity, and these are where we have a manual process, yet we have no automated solution. So we're asking in CLIN 3 to bring forward your solution in these areas to help fill these voids for us. So that would be, I should mention that first green block, it's called the Position Description Library. It's closer to the right-hand side. We are looking for an automated solution for classification of our GS employees, so that would be the Position Description Library. We do have other automated solutions. We have two different alternative pay systems, personnel systems, and they use systems called Automated Classification System, ACS. It's a homegrown system, and we also have another homegrown system called the Performance Payout System for dealing with our alternative personnel systems. Another area of opportunity is in the center, and that's the onboarding solution. And then finally, on the left-hand side, the last green block there is the separations management tool. So those are the areas, again, for opportunity for this CLIN. If we go to the next slide, there's other further opportunities. I think Ellen mentioned it, as did Glenn, and that we are looking for seamlessness, transparency, and so the foundations of that are automation. And so here's some other opportunities in the future. This is kind of wave 2 and beyond. So it's in the BPA, yet it's not in the call order. Number one, a data warehouse, a way to extract all this data from the various systems and be able to run analytics through it, as well as provide automated technology in other HR areas, for example, case management for employee and labor relations, performance management in the areas of compensation and benefits, audits and compliance. Again, these are future opportunities, but not in this current call order. Additionally, looking to automate the process to track federal civilian detailees and integration support services for current and future HR IT systems, so ways to bring all these pieces together. I think I'm going to hand it back to the MC, back to Bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. And next, I'd like to invite Kim Baus to the stage. Kim is from NOAA, and Kim's going to speak to CLIN number 1, NOAA staffing support, and some of the challenges we have there. Kim?
Good afternoon. It's nice to see a few familiar, friendly faces in the audience this afternoon. The HR director at NOAA's Office of Workforce Management, and you will notice in the schedule that NOAA is first in Wave 1, and also first here in CLIN 1 overall with this call order. The reason is that NOAA has some systemic challenges that we're hoping can be addressed through the move to shared services. We've had both resource and performance challenges that need to be addressed that have had a significant impact in our ability to adequately staff the NOAA organization. And it's gotten to the point where mission is being impacted, and it really is acute, and we need to do something to address it. I'm going to give you a little bit of background and then tell you what we hope to see come from you. So this issue really became an issue over the last 5 years, but it became particularly acute with sequestration and some of the hiring freezes that were in place. It created a real pent-up demand for staffing work in the organization, and that pent-up demand really was felt throughout government. So one of the things that we found is that as we've tried to resolve this backlog of work that's ensued, it's been a little bit of a challenge to find resources sufficient to help us address that. So we've brought on some contract support, And even with that support, we've found them challenged to find sufficient talent to come in and help us do this because of the pressing demands of government on the system overall. Last year, we filled about 1,000 positions for NOAA. It wasn't enough. Realistically, we should have been probably around 1,700 or 1,800 positions. We need to do about the same this year, and we just don't have the bandwidth to do it. So we could sit around and wait for shared services to be fully implemented, but ideally what we would like is for shared services, once it launches in August, for there to be a steady, predictable flow of staffing work coming into shared services. In order to do that, we really need to try and tackle the backlog ahead of time. So that's what we've been trying to do. We have some partners that we've brought on to try and help us with that. But we would also like to see with CLIN 1, if it's at all possible, for our shared services provider partner to help us with this, even potentially in advance of the full implementation of the shared services operation. May or not be feasible, but that's ultimately what we're asking for. Let me just give you a little bit of background. We typically have I think our staffing is about 12,500 to 13,000. Right now we're down to 11,500. Our attrition is about 6 to 7% in NOAA. We tend to hire a lot of people internally, so about half the time we advertise a position, it results in an internal move that doesn't necessarily bring in a new body into the organization. So when we have a gap of about 1,500 positions, it takes considerably more job postings than that to bring in the kind of talent, the number of people that we need. So we've just been struggling. We've been hampered ourselves with some chronic understaffing. It's a resource issue, it's a turnover issue. We've had 28% turnover over the last 5 years in our HR office. And that has just made it very, very difficult for us to address this problem by ourselves. So the bottom line is, we need your help. So let me tell you a little bit about what we'd like to see ideally for CLIN 1. And this would be my optimum state. First of all, to try and begin staffing work as soon as possible after award, ideally in advance of full implementation of shared services. So we're going to treat this as a separate CLIN, a body of work that can be tackled while shared services implementation is being stood up. Ideally, I would like the work to be done at your location and not mine. Frankly, I don't have the space for folks in Silver Spring. We don't do staffing work in this metropolitan area. Our staffing work is done at our office in Kansas City. And one alternative would be to put staff in that location in Kansas City. We can accommodate staff coming in there, but at the same time, we would be putting you with the very staff whose jobs are going to be going away. It's not an optimal situation, right? So my preference would be if we can work it out for the work to be done at your location through your supervision. We give you the packages, you return us a completed package. That would be optimal. We would need staff who are cleared. They need to have at least public trust. So if you've got some staff that are already cleared, that could shorten the process by which we could have people deployed to do this work. We do have a tracking system that we use. It's a really simple in-home system that's a workflow tool that we would use to push work to you and for you to track various steps in the process. It's called RADS. It's fairly basic, but it is the tool that we use today. Ultimately, RADS is not a tool that we will sustain through our enterprise approach with shared services, but it is the tool that we have in place for now. So we would basically push that work to you using RADS and then have you track just dates at key points in the process. You can also use it to communicate with the hiring manager, so all of the information about that particular recruitment is resident in one place in the system. Let's see. In terms of systems, we do use Monster Government Solutions. It is an instance that we derive through Treasury. So one alternative is to try and get you access through that instance, but I'm also open to alternatives. So long as I can push work to you and you can give me a completed case file at the end of the process, frankly, I don't care what you use. So long as it is a system that can be connected to USA Jobs and you can use to do the work. So if we can work it out to use the Treasury instance of Monster, that's great. If that's not an option, then we'll work something else out. So I'm open to that. Ideally, it would be better if all the work was in a system that ultimately we're going to use for reporting purposes. But if we have to do it outside of that, we've been having to do that anyway with one of our current provider partners, and they provide us data and reports, and then we have to, mesh the data for reporting purposes. And if we have to continue to do that, we will do that for the short term. This is a short-term solution to an acute problem, so we know we have to make some compromises. All right, so what are we talking about in terms of numbers? So I threw a lot of numbers out at you. Realistically, I think we probably will have, and this is my best guess at this point, at least 400 packages that we will have in the queue at any one point in time that have not been started. We actually have about 1,300 in the queue right now in various phases of being worked. So I know that the workload is potentially somewhere between a minimum of 400 and up to 12 to 1,300. But realistically, some of those will be in the works, and we'll probably just let those play out with the current providers. So I can easily say it'll be at least 400 cases. We would turn those cases over to you. You work them, get them back to us completed. Obviously, there will be a lot of interaction with our hiring managers. We do allow your HR specialists to work directly with those hiring managers in getting the work accomplished. And we will make staff available to do things like train your staff in RADS, train your staff in our alternative personnel system, and then provide any support that you need once selections are made to get things processed. So ultimately, it would be ideal, again for me, if these staff that are deployed to do this work are staff who ultimately end up on the shared services project as well, so that all of the time that we spend getting them trained and getting them to learn the organization is an investment that has a long-term payoff. That's ideal. Again, I'm open if that's not a possibility either, because we realize this is a distinct body of work. So I think that's it. The bottom line is that we need your help. NOAA has a fascinating mission. It's a really very, very cool organization. People like working there. Right now, our customers are very frustrated because they're struggling to meet mission. We actually have situations where we can't meet mission because we can't get the staff that they need to fulfill the work. And it's very frustrating for them. It's very frustrating for us as a service provider as well to be in that position. So we're looking for a partner to come in and help us. We also think in the long run, this is going to position us best to have a nice clean start when we do transition to shared services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. For our last segment, I'd like to invite Jake Acosta to the stage. Jake and I would like to talk a little bit about our acquisition process, overall schedule, and I'd like to wrap up with a very important issue, which is the social impact of our contract. So if I can invite Jake. Jake?
Thanks, Bill. Sorry it took me a while. I put my stuff down here, and then Ellen sat in my seat, and so I'm not that brave. So I just wanted to talk about milestones today. I drew the long stick, and so I have the shortest presentation. I only have one slide for you. If you're anything like me, you might have this ingrained and burned into your retinas. So we just wanted to go over it really quickly, just to pretty much hammer it home. So after today's industry day, the next major milestone is a big one. It's oral presentation. I'm sorry, it's your proposal due date. That's January the 19th. So it's coming up shortly. The day after, I missed one thing I wanted to note on the proposal due date. We're allowing two methods of submission. One of them is going to be courier service, UPS, USPS, FedEx, whatnot. The other method is going to be hand delivery. That's going to be at the entrance at the corner of 14th and Pennsylvania. So I wanted to point that out. So the day after the due date, you'll hear from Bill and I. We'll be notifying you of oral presentations, where, when, and what time. One thing to note is the where. We actually left it open. It might be here in this building, or it might be at your location. So on January the 20th, we'll give you those details. Following oral presentations, which is going to be the week of January the 25th, the government's going to come together and we're going to generate any questions and comments about your proposals. You'll hear back from Bill and I on February the 15th, and we'll be giving you our questions and comments, allowing you the opportunity to revise your proposals. Your revised and final proposals are going to be due February the 29th, and the method of submission is the same as it was before. You can courier or hand deliver it. With your final proposals, we'll be going into final evaluations, and you won't be hearing from us up until about tax day, April 15th. You'll be hearing from Bill and I once more, and this time it'll be for the notification of award. And so that's all I got for you, nice and short. I'll go ahead and pass it back over to Bill. But thanks a lot for coming out.
Thank you, Jake. If I could wrap up our presentation with a very important topic, and that really is the social impact of our contract. We are the Department of Commerce, and we are very sensitive and interested in the social impacts of our contract. You noted in our RFP, we have a 25% subcontracting requirement on each call order, and that's very important to us. We're not only looking for you to set aside a portion of the contract to small businesses, we're looking through your proposal and your actions to include small businesses in your overall solution. This is very important to us, and I want to emphasize that. The second area I'd like to emphasize relates to your recruiting and outreach efforts. It's very important that the jobs that are hired, we reach out to underrepresented segments of our population. This could include veterans, military spouses, but we're looking for your solutions in that area. And I want to send the message sincerely that we are very interested in and vested in the impact of our contract, and we're looking for your help in that area. So thank you very much. That concludes our presentation today, and we would like to now move into our question and answer period so we can interact with you a little bit more. Before we begin, let me invite our panel, if you all could take the stage, and while you do, I'd like to go over the format for our Q&A. First, please know that we understand that information is very important to you as a potential business partner. Our goal is to communicate and share the information that is available, but with that said, some of the questions answered today may be better answered for us in writing. So we would ask that reserve the right that if any question's hard to answer today, we'd like to reply to that question in writing. I want to emphasize that bidders have until 12 p.m. tomorrow night to submit any written questions, and we will respond to any question that is submitted. I have to provide this disclaimer that nothing in our presentation or answers today should be interpreted to conflict with the RFP. In the case of any ambiguity with the RFP takes precedence. Potential business partners are encouraged to submit any questions in writing where they see an ambiguity existing. From a format standpoint, we have two helpers with microphones. Victoria is here on our right and Shakir is on their left. If you have a question, I would ask that you raise your hand and allow time for the microphone to be brought to you. Once you have the microphone, we will call on you and we welcome your questions, and we're very interested in providing you with the information we have. So if you have any questions, and we hope you do, if you could raise your hand and we will move a microphone to you.
Good afternoon, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
And would you help us out if you could tell us your name and company as an introduction?
My name is Hans Jager of YRCI. It's an HRIT focused question. The contact center management technology, workflow technology is to be used by us as a partner. When do you expect in a best case scenario to have the systems available for our use?
Hi, Hans. So I think the best way to answer that question is the systems are available now. So there's two hurdles that I'm aware of that we'd have to overcome. Number one is the credentialing of the the people who will be accessing the systems. They're going to need the public trust. So that's one. The other one is if they're working not on the government site, then the network is going to have to meet the FSMA requirements. So that could also, depending upon the partner, some partners might already have a network that's already met the FSMA requirements, and so it would simply be a review of the documentation and issue an ATO. So it could be a few weeks, it could be longer, it depends on the individual situation.
Are there any questions? Any other questions?
Hi, Tom Bond from Monster. For CLIN 3, can that be pursued independent of pursuing the overall contract and be awarded accordingly if appropriate?
We do not anticipate multiple award or segmenting our contract. CLINs 1, 2, and 3 will be awarded under our BPA as one call order. Are there any other questions or information, please?
Good afternoon. I'm Marcia Staten with CFO Leasing. My question is regarding your CPI effort. And we've heard a lot about what you've done to get to this point. But my question really is, are you expecting CPI pre or post migration? And to what extent has your continuous process improvement efforts, what efforts have you engaged in to date?
So just to, if you could reiterate, you're asking what CPI efforts we've done to date?
Right. You have waves, you have phases, and now you have waves for implementation, and different bureaus are going to be migrating at different times. So when you think in terms of continuous process improvement, particularly as it relates to your goal of standardization, it's like those who go first will be the leaders in that, or you have some framework under which you're operating in order to govern that. And I was just curious about that.
Okay, thank you. So what we have been doing in the various phases that we talked earlier, phase 2 in particular, and continuing on, we actually have started to look at done some business process mapping, looking across our various functions that are going into wave 1 to come up with some standardized processes across the department. So some of that is already being done. We're also looking at doing some, standard operating procedures so that once the potential partner is selected, then we will work and coordinate with them at that time. So there are activities, re-engineering and reprocessing activities that have been going on in the various phases up till now, and that will continue until the potential vendor is selected. Is that what you needed? Great, thank you.
Any other questions? We really welcome any information we can provide. While we're thinking, let me provide a couple administrative closing notes. First, I want to emphasize again, I probably misspoke, it's actually 11:59 tomorrow where your questions are due, but I would encourage you to submit any written questions that you have after this presentation today. Also wanted to reiterate that we will be providing a video as well as the slide deck of our presentation on our website, so please look for that as soon as we can get it posted, but within the next day or so, there will be the actual slide decks, the slides on the screen will be made available. But are there any other questions or anything we can help you with?
Hi, it's Jeff Koch with YRCI. A question on the workflow system. In the solicitation, it discusses submitting action requests through the workflow system, and those will be routed appropriately and worked. Is the configuration of the workflow system going to be done? I mean, would that be something that would be done by Deloitte, and we would work with them on determining how that would be done, or is that something that you would see your partner, whatever, I guess Deloitte's your partner too, but which partner would you say would be configuring, actually configuring the system?
Yeah, so I'll just restate the question just to make sure I understand it. So the question is, it's pertaining to the workflow system, and which partner would we be working with, or you be working with in conjunction with? So that is currently in the process. That's part of the overreaching technologies. So that is currently going down a different acquisition path to be procured. So it hasn't been selected as of yet.
I'm sorry, but
Can I just add one thing to that real quick, Jeff? If you step back and understand the vision, that'll make more sense. So the ultimate goal for the shared service center is not to be an HR shared service center. It's to be an administrative shared service center. So the intent is to develop a workflow tool that a manager could go through a portal and basically submit a request for any of the administrative activities that they need to perform that are available through shared services. So that's why it's being done separate and apart from this effort.
Yeah, no, and I deduced that from what you said and what had been published elsewhere. But the actual configuration of the workflow system, do we propose how that's to be done? Is that something that Deloitte would be doing overall?
Thanks,
All right,
Glenn.
let me see if I can clarify a little bit. It would be our expectation that you come with your own workflow tool to be able to handle this work and then ultimately migrate into our overall technology stack. And the technology stack, you're going to see ultimately, we're seeking a turnkey solution of all of that. So it will probably be, I would hope, relatively plain vanilla in terms of and with some kind of configurations that we have already agreed to. Does that help? Okay.
Are there any other questions? I'll give you one more opportunity, but let me wrap up by saying we hope through our presentations today, not only that we provided information, but that you got the sense of how important this project is to us. We're passionate about this, we're trying to improve the government, and we really need your help. And we thank you for your interest. We thank you for coming down to the Department of Commerce today. I know it's a cold day out there, and many of you traveled, so we really appreciate your efforts. We look forward to working with you as potential business partners through the acquisition process. And again, thank you for your participation today. If you have any questions, certainly on your way home, please submit them in writing. We want you to have the information you need to bid. So thank you again. One final comment. We have the foyer. That space is available, and we would encourage you to network and communicate. Our staff will be available as they can. But thank you again. One last time, is there any questions while we have anybody here? This concludes our presentation, and thank you very much for coming.